Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, and the Reconstruction era leads to the Jim Crow era. It leads to these white supremacists taking back control of the state legislatures, imposing segregation. We look in Tennessee, 1881, Tennessee state legislature, they passed segregation laws dealing with public transportation and streetcars. We look at Florida, 1889. Florida passes probably the first poll taxes in the history of this country. Then Mississippi's going to do the same thing in 1890 when Mississippi writes their state constitution. And they write their state constitution. When you go research the writing of these state constitutions, 1890 Mississippi, 1895 South Carolina, 1898 Louisiana, 1901 Alabama, etc., Georgia, Oklahoma. They're doing this to preserve white supremacy. And in many of their state constitutions, they're telling you this, and they are passing voter suppression laws. They're passing laws to legalize poll taxes and literacy tests, property ownership requirements, etc. when it comes to voting. And they're doing this to suppress the African American vote, because in many of these states, we were the majority of the population. Okay, so your understanding of history is directly related. Your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. When you understand this history, then you understand why they work so hard to suppress our vote, why Governor Ron DeSantis submitted a congressional map in Florida, okay, that would gerrymander districts to reduce the voting power of African Americans. You'll understand now. Not to make this a long explanation, because I go deep into this. We talked about this in one of my classes a couple of weeks ago, and in one of our Sunday night shows, we dealt with this. Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution. The Mississippi State Constitution of 1890 consists of something like about 250. It's about 250 sections. All right. This article, just to give you a quick example, this article from the Washington Post deals with the Mississippi State Convention of 1890, where they rewrote the state constitution to impose poll taxes, literacy tests, and property ownership requirements. But they also instituted a felony disenfranchisement law. African Americans were the majority of the population of the state of Mississippi in 1890 as a legacy of slavery, and we were the majority of the voters. The name of this article is The Mississippi Plan. The Mississippi Plan to Keep Blacks from Voting in 1890. Quote, "We came here to exclude the Negro. We came here to exclude the Negro." Okay, now this is an excellent article by Ronald G. Schaefer. He's a white man. May 1st, 2021. It talks about Solomon Saladin Calhoun. Solomon Saladin Calhoun was the white county judge who presided over the Mississippi State Convention of 1890 in Jackson, Mississippi, which is the capital. And he said, "Let's tell the truth if it burst the bottom of the universe." He said, "We came here to exclude the Negro." Nothing short of this will answer. This is why they had the Mississippi State Convention, to suppress the African American vote. Delegates eventually adopted a literacy test and poll tax. A poll tax meant you had to pay a tax to register to vote. A poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in a state with a black majority, Mississippi. The Mississippi Plan became the model throughout the South, part of a raft of racially oppressive Jim Crow laws that ended segregation. So all the other Southern states are going to adopt similar state constitutions, okay, to suppress the African American vote. All right. And they're trying to find ways to get around the 15th Amendment of 1870, which guaranteed the right to vote for African American men. It's not going to be until the 19th Amendment of 1920 where women can vote. But we know that in the South, a lot of African American women are not going to be able to vote. And that's why you needed a Voting Rights Act of 1965, because of what happens with these state constitutions and the impediments to the 15th Amendment. This is why you needed a Voting Rights Act of 1965. All right, now, very quickly here, there's an article that I'm looking for. I think this is it right here. The U.S. Supreme Court recently, in June of 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear a challenge to the Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I hear all these black conservatives running around saying slavery was a long time ago, Jim Crow era was a long time ago, that doesn't have anything to do with today. That's a lie. Those are people that don't study history, or they do study history and they're trying to deceive people. That's an absolute blatant lie. A lot of those laws and policies are still in effect, and they're shaping policy today. Or if you look at something like the lost cause, which comes about shortly after the Civil War ends, and the lost cause was a revisionist history taught by the South, that the Civil War was about states' rights. It was not about slavery, that the slaves were happy slaves, that the institution of slavery benefited everybody. OK, and the slaves were too ignorant to take care of themselves. Therefore, they had to be taken care of by benevolent masters. This is called the lost cause. Go research the lost cause. OK, this article right here from MississippiFreePress.org, MississippiFreePress.org. Mississippi Jim Crow felony voting law will remain after Supreme Court denies appeal. This is from June 30th, 2023. This stuff is not ancient history. OK, we're seeing how the laws and policies of the past shape the present and the future. This deals with Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890. And the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear a challenge to this felony disenfranchisement law that goes back to 1890 at the Mississippi State Convention. And Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote a scathing dissension to the Supreme Court refusing to hear this case. Mississippi's Jim Crow era prohibitions on allowing people convicted of certain crimes to vote will remain after the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal in the case today. The Fifth Circuit, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of upholding the law last year in Harness versus Watson. So that's 2022, Harness versus Watson. Mississippi's white supremacist leaders adopted it in 1890 in an attempt to disenfranchise black residents for life. Disenfranchise black residents for life. So if you convicted of certain crimes, murder, things like this, rape in Mississippi, you lost your right to vote for life. It was designed to target African Americans to reduce the number of us who could vote. White lawmakers designated certain crimes that they believed black people were more likely to commit as lifelong disenfranchising crimes. The law disproportionately disenfranchises black Mississippians at a higher rate than white residents. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson recounted the law's history today in a dissent against the court's refusal to take up the case. Justice Sonia Sotomayor joined her. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, in her dissent, said, quote, "The president of the 1890 Mississippi Constitutional Convention said it plain. Let us, quote, let us tell the truth if it bursts to the bottom of the universe. We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer," end quote. To further that agenda, the convention placed 9 crimes in Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution as basis for disenfranchisement, believing that more black people would be convicted of those crimes than white people, end quote, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote. She went on to say, quote, 8 of those crimes have remained in Section 241 since 1890 without interruption. Thus, the convention's avowed goals continue to be realized via its chosen mechanism. Today, just as in the convention's aftermath, thousands of Black Mississippians cannot vote due to Section 241's operation, end quote. Read the rest of this article here, okay? This is just an example of this history and how it is still impacting us today. All right. Okay, so read that. Okay, let's get back to this. How's everybody doing? Also, once again, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. So let's keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, and we have the information on the homepage of our website as well. When you scroll down past the information about our classes, we have the PayPal Cash App information here. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. So that's why I put the tag here. When you click here, it takes you to our QR code. Okay, and we have our link for PayPal here as well. All right, let's continue. And we have the link here in the